to the Underdog Podcast. Today's episode, we have a Behind the Underdogs, a very exciting interview. We finally got another athlete interview under our belt, so this is an exciting one. It's a long one, but there's a lot of good stories in this one. Today we have Dino Kambeitz, and I'm going to let Dylan do the intro since he went to high school with him. So, Dylan.
For sure. So Dino is a longtime friend. As Joe said, we went to high school together starting in grade 10 was when Dino came to Edge. So Dino is originally from Denver, Colorado, and we met when he came up to play for the Edge at the U15 level. And we played together for 2 years, went to school together for 3. So Dino came in, joined our 15s team in grade 10, and we went on to play prep together the following year in grade 11. And then we both went our separate ways for junior hockey in grade 12, and both came back after our seasons ended to graduate and finish out the year together in grade 12. And after that, Dino spent another 3 seasons split between the Victoria Royals and the Lethbridge Hurricanes in the WHL, where he was captain his last year, and he has now finished his 3rd season pro with the Bakersfield Condors. So it was awesome to have Dino on, catch up with him a little bit. The last time I saw Dino was during COVID. We were both in Calgary together skating, so that was the only place that had ice. Literally no one else had ice in. All the rinks were shut down, so Dino and I both ended up in Calgary again, skating together, and that was the last time we got to catch up. Obviously, we've texted over the years and whatnot and stayed in touch, but that was the first time we got to chat on the phone, so a lot of his pro career, those stories were new to me too, so it was a lot of fun to catch up with him, and he actually shared a ton of insight, especially on the mental side of things, everything from preparation to dealing with his own adversities and egos, and dealing with the pressure of finding a way to succeed in the WHL, which is tough to do as a young kid, and ultimately that transformed into pro hockey and finding his role there, and identifying his brand, so to speak. So it was an
And a lot of funny
awesome.
stories, too.
Yes, and he's absolutely hilarious. He's one of my favorite guys from Edge. Him and I were really close. Obviously, I told you before too. We were training partners. Him, Doc, and I were kind of the 3 big meatheads for the 2000 age group, and we shared a weight rack and really got after it. So it was a lot of fun training with him, and I have a lot of good memories from high school with Dino. And like I said, he's absolutely hilarious. We probably could have just sat on there and told stories for an hour and a half and just laughed our asses off. But he's quite the character, and I love that guy to death.
Yep. So, without further ado, Dino Kambeitz.
My dad, obviously growing up just outside Medicine Hat there by you, massive into hockey, took the WHL route. So I started pretty young and then, started playing AAA in Denver, which was good. Like we had a good berth here in Denver, a lot of good competition. Played AAA all throughout the States, all the Chicago Missions and Little Caesars and all those guys. So really good competition there. And then kind of when I started to transition into, freshman year of high school, playing AAA, like you're away from school a ton. And this was right before the WHL draft. So I didn't really know if I wanted to do college. Um, so long story short, my marks were taking a hit, trying to go to public school and play AAA, missing, a ton of time. Um, so then ended up getting drafted to the Dub, not a high pick at all. I was 5th round pick. But for me, like I was pretty set on the Dub just because I wanted to kind of follow, my dad in that route. Just with him being through it, thought, I'd have a lot of good insights. Um, so after my 14-year-old season, wasn't 100% sure what I was gonna do. Our 16 team was gonna be good, and you know, didn't really love the exposure that the WHL gets in the States, especially
Mhm.
back then. It wasn't like it is now with the draft and everything.
Yeah.
So I knew I wanted to get somewhere where they would have a better access for me. And then, from my mom's side, she was definitely pushing the school piece big time. So we were kind of looking at all those schools like Shattuck and Salisbury, a ton of those New England prep schools,
Yeah.
Avon, all those places to kind of bridge that gap with the schooling. And then so I ended up going out to Shattuck, skated at Shattuck, made the U16 team at Shattuck, and then when I was talking to the coach and kind of told him, I want to do the dub route. They're I don't know how it is now, but back then, they were more, really like their guys going, USHL route and then into college.
Yeah.
So we didn't really align on that philosophy, and so I ended up looking around. And funny story was that the prep coach Scotty at Edge, he used to coach my dad when my dad
Yeah.
played at Mount Royal
I
at
was trying to
USC.
remember. I was telling Joey
Yeah,
before. I was like, I think Jim played for Scotty, our prep coach, but I couldn't remember for sure. So that's what it was. So Scotty was
yeah,
Jim's coach at Mount Royal. No kidding.
yeah. So Scotty coached my dad like way back when. And when we were looking through like all these schools, we are like, God, like, don't really want to go live out in BC. Like, didn't love that route. I have a ton of family in Calgary, like ton of family in Alberta. So we were looking at schools, found Edge, and then when my dad saw that Scotty was there, he was like, "Oh, like this is like I know this guy very well. We had a good relationship. He kind of, this was back when Scotty, kind of ran Edge.
Yeah.
So went out. It was like such a crapshoot. Went out, saw Edge, skated once, was like, yeah, like I mean, I liked it, but they didn't have a billet system there, right? It wasn't like Shattuck where, they have the dorms and everything.
Yeah.
So we were like, yeah, like 100% would come play here. I met a few of the guys that were on the prep team that year, like great guys. So I was 100% sold, but the billet thing was like a massive issue. So then when I went to camp, that what is it like? I think the beginning of August or something, end of August, WHL
Yeah.
camps. Went to camp, flew to Calgary, dropped my stuff off in Scotty's office because I didn't have a billet yet. But I was like, yeah, I'm gonna come play here. Didn't have a billet. I went to Vic, went through camp in Vic, was in preseason, like just about to go back to Calgary, and finally I got like the text from like whoever the like head lady was back then.
Oh yeah,
Like,
and
oh,
McCaffrey back then.
in McCaffrey, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And she was like, "Hey, like, great news! we found you a billet. It's the Huckles. Like, no idea who these people are. Like, didn't have a kid that played hockey. Like, didn't. So just like a big, big hip fire.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, obviously, like that, went very well. The Huckles are now like technically my second parents,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, just like such a freaking shot in the dark to get out there.
Yeah. No kidding. So that's how I was trying to remember, how it all came to be, but that's funny. Yeah, and I was telling Joe too. So that was our 15-year-old year, so grade 10. Went through that, and then we played prep together. And then did you go now? Did you almost play in Vic our prep year, and then end up coming back for prep?
Yeah, so after our 15 season, I yeah, so that would have been my 16-year-old season coming up. That was our prep year. And yeah, like I started the season in Vic, played like the first like handful of games in Vic,
Yeah,
and then I remember Dave Lowry calls like I'm like because back then it was like basically if you were on the opening night roster, like you're on the team. So I
yeah,
was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, 16-year-old made the dub, like just ego through the roof. And then I remember Dave Lowry called me in his office and he was like, yeah, we're gonna send you back to midget. We think you need like a little bit more time and we want you to develop more and all that. And I remember coming back to my billets placing Vic, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm quitting hockey. I'm done. I got cut. Like this is just game over. Edge is gonna be terrible. Like it was like the freaking end of the world. Come to find out, like we had, I mean, that's still probably my favorite season of hockey I've ever had was that
Yeah,
prep year.
and probably the best team we ever played on, best team I've ever played
Yeah.
on as far as record. So Joe, we ended up going 55-7, I think is what it says on our rings.
That's a lot of
We
games too.
Yeah, so we would
Yeah.
play. So we played in the CSHL, so Canadian Sports School Hockey League. So not that you would know some of these teams, Joe, but like obviously in Bantam, it was the original four were us, Delta Academy in Vancouver, POE in Kelowna, and OHA, which were like the four big ones. And then by our prep year, there was what, Dino, probably like a dozen teams.
Yeah, I think the league almost doubled our prep year, and then they added, I think that one team out in Toronto that was kind of like half
Right.
in, half out.
Yeah. So at that point, like the CSHL had really made a name for itself. All the big schools in Canada were a part of it, and like every year there was substantially more WHL picks coming from the CSHL because they had the bantam teams as well. Um, but yeah, our prep year we ended up winning the World Sports School Challenge at Christmas, and then we won playoffs in March at the end of the year. And then we got third we went to the St. Andrews tournament, and we would have played Hosine Joe. So our goalie played for St.
Okay.
Andrews, and
Oh, no
he's our
way.
age. So we would have played him, and back then he was a stud. And yeah, we ended up beating St. Andrews Joe that year. Like we were like legitimately one of the best midget teams in Canada, and I mean we killed
Yeah.
everybody. And
I remember that was back when St. Andrews had like scouts coming to the game.
yeah,
They had like
I remember
Buffalo there or
Scotty too.
something.
Yeah, Scotty's like these aren't fucking Western League scouts. These are show scouts. We're like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like it was crazy. It was like that was the real deal. Like, and they had what, three guys like preparing for the NHL draft that year,
Oh yeah.
which which was nuts. I'm trying to think of the one name in particular who was like a high end pick that ended up going. Um,
Yeah, it was that forward that went to Boston or to Buffalo. I can't remember his name, but yeah, I remember that was a big deal. Like going to that tournament because it was like this
yeah,
was for like the. I mean, I don't even know if we knew about it at the time. There was like some like rankings of like
yeah,
sports schools across Canada, and these like St. Andrews was like the team to beat.
yeah.
So
They
it
were
was
number one, and then we beat them 2-0, and it was like holy shit! Like we are legitimately like one of the best teams in Canada.
Wow.
But yeah, that year was a ton of fun. So I guess to dive into it more, Dino, like what was that like coming back? Obviously, you said it was hard getting cut from Vic. What was your mentality? What was your attitude like coming into that prep season?
yeah. I mean, kind of like I said. I mean, and it's just like it's funny to look back on kind of that stage, but in hindsight, I mean, for me personally, like I think that was the best thing that could have happened for my hockey career. Just, I mean, at 16, like you go to these teams, you know, it's hard. Like it's the dub is a hard league to carve into at a young age, especially at 16 playing against some of these like high end NHL prospects that are in the dub.
Yeah,
Um, so going back to Edge, I mean, like I said, like I was pissed, like really pissed. Like I couldn't believe that I had to go back to Edge. Like thought that I was for sure able to, play at 16, for sure able to, make this impact. And then, you know, when I came back, I was kind of in the mindset of, I gotta be like the guy on our prep team and like, show Vic that, I should have been on the team and um, try to basically like present myself as like this kid that, should have been playing in the Western League, but, got snubbed and now I'm playing a midget. And looking back, I mean, I guess in a way it was a good mindset to have, just that, I was hungry. Like I was like
Mhm.
every game, I'm trying to score like every game. Like we need to have like multiple points. Like this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And so, in hindsight, I guess that was a good mindset to an extent. I think, um, it did like really consume me at times, when things weren't going the right way. Like I remember our first weekend that I was back with the team. We went up to Banff, which Banff was like really bad. Like
Horrendous.
they were like not good. So we go back to Banff, and I'm like, oh my God, like I need to be averaging like at least 3 points a game. And I remember the first game, it was like right after the second period, I had no points, like was playing horrible, just like totally playing like, you know, the biggest ego on the ice. And I remember I was outside the locker room, like flipping out, like just just so wrapped up in everything. And I remember Scotty coming out and just like he was like, man, like, relax. Like this is like there's good players in this league. Like you're
Yeah.
not gonna like come in here and dominate. Like this is a good like area for you to work on and not have to be so wrapped up in your points. And like, Vic wants you to play like this more of like a complete game. That's kind of the reasons that you got sent back. So I mean, in hindsight, it was really good for me to come back and kind of round out my game. But I think from the mental side, it was the first time that I was really like, holy smokes, like I gotta like dive into
Yeah.
this mental game a bit more and not let it freaking eat me alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was
I
gonna
know.
say, so like as you moved on from there, obviously I think expectation can kill a lot performance wise, right? Like if you're expecting, I mean, Dylan, like we're playing all, some of these shit teams, right? In D3. And it's like you have this high expectation of like you got to perform, kind of a similar situation. But how have you kind of proceeded with that throughout your career in terms of like the mental training? Because I feel like the last maybe 5 to 10 years or so, like the mental side of the game has really started to catch traction, and people are starting to focus on that, arguably even more than the physical training. Because you can be in peak condition, you can be the most skilled player on the ice, but if your head game isn't there, it's over before it even begins.
Yeah, no, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more on that. I think, like I said, like that season was kind of the first time that I was kind of like, oh, okay, like like my head, there's things I need to start working on here. Like the expectations, like the nerves before games, like through that whole prep season, like you're just like, oh my God, like people are watching, and just like how you just feel like there's like this shadow of you. And then, um, my dad has always been really big into the mental side, and so I worked a ton with him. And then I got with this guy who's based out of Calgary. His name's Bob Wilkie. His company is called I Got Mine, and he's like great teacher. A guy that's been through it, was a really high draft pick to Detroit back in the day, and so he was kind of the first guy that really got me uh, into the mindset where, I mean, it's a phrase that's been said a million times, but control what you can control, right? So like I would go through these notebooks with him, like big, thick notebooks, like these workbooks that I used to do with him of just like tons of mental reps, like breaking down each game, like, and having all these little goals. And I think the biggest thing that I took from my prep season into that mental work was just like the numbers, like not being concerned about numbers. Because
Mhm.
I mean, you guys are in the same boat. Like, you can look back at certain games and be like, oh my God, like I was on fire that game, like had a ton of touches, like was making all these plays, but I had 0 points. And then there's these games where you're like on the back half of the 3-3, your legs are in the mud, but you had like 2 goals and an assist. So it's like, and then you feel great, right? So
Yeah.
he was kind of the first guy to kind of getting me started on that path of, you know, your expectations should be things that you can, you know, in a way control. Like it's, expecting yourself to like always put out a certain effort, expecting yourself to always finish those hits, expecting yourself to always block the shots, win the face off. things like that, which for me, like, and I tell like young kids that, I worked with Bob for a bit with his company, and I would always tell kids like, I wish I started that stuff early, like
Mm,
really early, like well before my midget years for sure.
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. I mean, Joey and I talk about that mental side of things all the time, and the mind games, and your perception of things versus the reality of them. It can be a lot, but no, like you said, I think that prep year was probably like the turning point in your young career. At that point, I mean, Dino dominated Joey that year. You, Cash, and Wakeford on that line, you guys lit it up. You took on that complete role. And Edge was such a launching pad. Like the access, I know we were talking about Ross the other day. Like Ross was our trainer, Joe in high school. He was
Mm.
unbelievable at one training us, but also the mental side of things too, and nutrition and our sleep habits. Like he really was like a life coach almost, and really prepared us to be complete athletes and prepared us for the next level. So, and just the access we had there, like we had, the two rinks, like the two sheets, we had the shooting cages, and then like the duck, it's like 10,000 square feet, and we had access to it. We train
Yeah.
in the mornings. Like, I mean, Edge was unbelievable. I always tell Joey when he comes up here that we got to go check it out because I look back and that was the best
Oh
decision I ever made for my career was going to Edge. Like I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have played at LIU. I probably would have played in the Null if I hadn't gone to Edge. Like it was the best thing that we could have done. And then obviously we did well and collected some hardware that year too. And then you're off to Vic. So what was that like? What was the biggest change for you? What was the biggest adjustment on the ice, lifestyle wise, and again, obviously mentally too, jumping into the real deal. We go from playing in front of really no fans in high school, other than our big home games during school, to
oh.
playing in front of a few thousand fans every night.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, like my first year, um, it was really up and down. I mean, you know, you go from our prep year where you're like the guy, like everything runs through you, you're playing a ton,
Yeah.
kind of basically being able to do what you want in the league, and then going to the dub where, you know, you're really starting, like you're starting at zero. And I think, for me, it was tough. It was tough at the beginning, just kind of figuring out what that next level to hockey is.
Mhm.
I think, for me, I've always been a nerd about the game, and I've always, studied the game a ton growing up, but I never really, looked at the game from that kind of professional angle, which I think the best thing that I loved about the dub was it's like you're playing professional hockey. So,
Mhm.
you know, as a young kid going into that, I think, for the first little bit it was really overwhelming, right? Like I didn't really know my role. There was a ton of pressure of, to collect points and look towards the draft. That was a huge piece.
Mhm.
And then like just like little things like you said, like then you got the crowd involved, which I mean, like you said, I was not used to that.
Yeah.
You got the billeting side, which I was I was fortunate and unfortunate with my billets. I was fortunate in the sense that they were like amazing people. Like couldn't have asked for a better family to have as at a young age. Like just like great people, like cared about me, wanted to know what I was doing, wanted to know what I needed. But the flip side of that was, I was alone in the billet house. So I
Mhm.
didn't, so a lot of the time, coming home after practices or after games and like really secluded, um, you know, like just didn't really have, I wasn't aware yet until I started working with Bob about how important like the time away from the rink is. And I didn't put enough like emphasis on, what I was doing away from the rink, how I was, helping myself, that whole side. So, I think that was a big change, just going from, living with my brother at Edge and, the group that we had in Calgary, like we were all so tight that it was there. You really weren't alone. So I think that was a big change for me. And then, on the positive side at the rink, we had, that year in Vic, we were going for it. Like we were loading up as a team. So I was fortunate to have, a lot of older guys that had been to NHL camps, been drafted, and then after the trade deadline, we traded for a ton of NHL guys.
Oh,
So, kind of later on in the season, when we started getting a ton of these guys, that was kind of the first time that I kind of saw the switch between, midget guys, like who's good at midget, and even in junior, like, we had some guys that were good junior guys, but they weren't NHL draft picks. And so that was kind of the first time that I saw the switch and really like watch these NHL guys, like the way that they, before and after games, what they're eating, kind of what they're into away from the rink. That was kind of the first time where I was like, oh, there's tiers to this. And so that was kind of the first time that I saw, guys like Matt Phillips, he's a Calgary guy, Tanner Kaspick, St. Louis pick, Noah Gregor, plays for the Leafs right now. Just some of those guys that I was starting to kind of watch, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta start changing a few things. Like I still operate like I'm a midget.
So
So
how old were
that
you at that?
was I would have been uh I would have been 17 my first year.
Okay, gotcha.
So I mean still like I was definitely a mature kid just because, I left home at 15. So, I had to figure things out early, right? Like going and leaving home and going to Calgary. So it was more my maturity at the rink that was having to shift.
mhm.
You know what I mean? Like little stuff, like playing a game and then having to cool down, right? Like we did it a little bit at the edge, but not to the point of what like these guys were doing. And even on that, it was, watching, just Phillips is he's a great example, just especially the career he's carved out in pro, but like he would, play the game, do the team cool down, but then he's doing extra stuff on top of that. And that was kind of the first time where I started seeing guys doing that, and I was like, oh, like, this is probably why he's able to do what he can do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Hell, we were
that
only
was a
cool
big shift.
when Jacqueline made us in 15s.
Yeah. When we're getting yelled at by Jacqueline while sandstorms buzzing in the background.
Oh, okay. Quick side note. This is such a funny story. I still think about this. We were in a hotel. I want to say, um, in OHA in Penticton, and Jacqueline Joe. So this is our team
Oh
trainer.
my God.
She was crazy. Like she was psychotic. She made us do
Yeah,
this like 30-minute warm up and crazy cool down. And if she didn't do it, she was barking at you. Like it was
yeah,
nuts. So the one weekend, like we'd go do these showcases where we play 4 games in a weekend and then bus back to Edge and be at school Monday. So she was making us go in the pool and then have an ice bath. And Dino's like, Jacqueline, we're not fucking having an ice bath. And she's like,
Not doing
You're
it.
getting in there. You're getting in there. It's like, no, fucking not. I think you ended up hucking the ice bin at her, walking out of the
Yeah, I
room.
did. Oh yeah. Yeah. I was sitting in the tub, like had the water in there. And she came in and like poured like two freaking buckets of ice on me, and I was so pissed that I like ended up just like launching one of these freaking ice buckets at her, and she was that was that was
Oh
not
god,
good.
it was so funny. I remember seeing that in the hallway. I'm just like,
Oh
like
yeah,
try not to
it was
laugh because
bad.
we all wanted to, but none of us had the balls, but Dino to do it, and it was so funny. And our coach
Yeah.
that year, his name was Kelly Marock, most chilled out guy ever. Like doesn't
Oh
give
yeah.
a fuck. And he's like, I remember coming up to you like, hey, like I know you didn't want to have an ice bath, but like, we can't be throwing buckets at our trainer. And he's like, it's all right though. Like, it stuff happens. Like, it was so
There's like no repercussions at all.
yeah.
Looking back, I was like, what a little shit was. Like just total freaking egomaniac. Like didn't know better. Just
Oh God, it was so funny. But I think like that's one of the things you see change when you're in the dub and now obviously playing professional hockey. Like it's those little things that add up and make a difference. the cool downs after the game, doing a proper warm up.
Yeah.
That's the difference between the top guys and guys that tend to just mellow out and plateau. So yeah, that was your 17-year-old year, and then you went back, came back, and graduated with us. And then did you go back to Vic for one more? And then that was the trade to Lethbridge.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah. So ended up having a good first season. Like had good numbers, had a pretty good role. Um, and then yeah, went back for my 18-year-old season and kind of honestly kind of the same thing like at Edge. Like went
Mhm.
back and thought like, oh, I gotta have 20 goals and like these numbers and I gotta get drafted. And so it was just like weight after weight after weight. And kind of like a different aspect of it was, I had a pretty good first season. Like I think I had like 11 goals or something. So, kind of a new thing to deal with was like the media attention, right? Like I
Mhm.
remember my first when I came back into Vic and I'm getting interviewed and they're, Kambeitz off, a monstrous rookie year and this and that. So I'm like, oh, like I'm freaking like I'm the shit. Like I'm a first overall. Like I like it's like when's the draft? So just like couldn't have put more pressure again, like ego through the roof. Couldn't have put more pressure on myself. And so started that season like really bad. Like just
Mhm.
so in my head, like squeezing the stick tight, like started off really bad. Like and it's unfortunate because like I was getting put in a lot of good situations.
Mhm.
Like the team was like trying to be like, hey, we're gonna like throw you a bone here, but just
Mhm.
like mentally so freaking so weak. And so that it was right before Christmas, I remember I had like I think like two goals. Like I was like freaking out. I was like, oh my God, like I can't like play here anymore. Like I lost something. And so that's when I started working with Bob. I started working with Wilkie, and that's kind of where, like, for me personally, I like when I look back on my career this far, like I think if I didn't start working with Wilkie, that probably honestly would have been my last year of hockey. Like I
Wow.
like I honestly don't really know if I would have. I don't know if I would have played after that. I might have just played out my WHL career and kind of been like a subpar player. Maybe probably would have got traded, but not on my term. You know what I mean? Like it could have really declined. And mentally, like I was in that space. Like mentally, I was like, I guess I don't have it. Like, you know what I mean? Like I guess I lost it. So that year, started training with Bob, started doing all his work, and just like it was like a friggin' light turned on. Like went into playoffs, had, you know, the first round of playoffs had like almost a goal per game. I was leading the dub in goals in the first round, like really started like figure things out, like mentally starting to
What was the shift? Like, what did you change in that period of time that really clicked for you that made you start to perform on the ice? I feel like that's a problem a lot of guys struggle with, right? Like,
oh
especially when
totally.
you're in the spotlight. I mean, I feel like everybody who's played junior and then maybe went on to college and then got the chance to play pro, like they've all had that experience because you're good at some point to be able to make it to that next level,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of people have been in that scenario. But what was it for you that really clicked?
Honestly, for me, like the two things that really, in my opinion, and it's stuff I still use, that really shifted kind of my projection was my biggest flaw was how wrapped up I would get in the lineup. Like
Mhm.
when I would walk in, if I got dropped anywhere in the lineup or there was any sort of change negatively for me, like that was like done. Like bad practice, I'm
Mhm.
pissed off, don't want to talk to any like just like negative, 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 negative. So the first thing was that like that was one thing that me and Bob really worked on was I can't control if the coach changed the lineup, like that is
Mhm.
like
Yep.
so far out of my control. So the first thing was that like really understanding kind of the control piece to hockey teams,
Mhm.
right? Like as a player, what can I control? So for me, the first thing was the lineup. That was a big thing that I had to kind of switch in my head. And then another thing, kind of like I was saying earlier, was breaking down the season. And this is something that I still use it a ton, is, at the start of the season, I was like, okay, we play 72 games. I need 20 goals and 30 assists. So then, like, you're going through the season, you're like I'm behind my pace.
Could be
So
here. Yeah.
yeah, I should have all these numbers. Like, well, like I'm falling behind, and just the stress that came. So I started doing these, like, I would do these 10 game segments, and so I would do 10 game segments, but each game I would have like 3 goals. But the rule was each goal wasn't it, you couldn't have a stat, right? So it couldn't be like in these 10 games, I want to have, or sorry, so it'd be like, so for example, I'd go 10 games, I want to have 3 goals, 4 assists. And then inside of that, it would be in each game, and these don't change. Those couldn't be goals. So those would be like, I want to have, 2 block shots. I want to, have 3 shots on net, and I want to have, 3 hits,
Mm.
right? Like they weren't allowed to be, I want to have a goal this game or things like
Yeah.
that. And that to me was a massive shift. One, because it took a ton of weight off myself,
Mm.
where I didn't have to focus and kind of like strategically map out my goals. And two, it was something where like it was so obtainable. Like I can block 2 shots. That's something where like that is a very obtainable goal. And
Mhm.
I made it goals where it fit my role. Like it was
Mhm.
something where even if I don't score, I'm still affecting the game inside of my role, right? So being, kind of a shutdown guy, my like blocking shots, hits, being good on face-offs, that was all as good as a goal. So that was kind of the first thing that I tweaked where I was like, oh, holy shit. Like I can come out of games, not have a point, but I'm looking at these games and being like, man, like I played good. Like I impacted the game. I hit these goals. And then it was just like, it was so funny to see how the numbers would just start following that. So that was like, those were the two main things where like it really clicked, like really started to turn the dial where it was kind of like, okay, we can start making up some ground here. So that was
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like instead of like focusing on the big picture, like the whole season, you're breaking it down into more like digestible chunks where you're like, okay, this is more attainable. And then you're just repeating that throughout the season. And then by the time the end of the season comes, you're like, well, I had a pretty damn good season just based on like breaking into small chunks, small, like attainable tasks that you can actually do. I feel like that kind of goes with anything though. Like Dylan, even on the business side, right? Like when you think about the long term, like where you want to be, it's like holy shit, like that's a big thing to think about. Like how the hell are you going to get there, and then just kind of working backwards from there to actually make it attainable throughout the process. That's good. I like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was so funny because like I remember going through his workbook and like seeing certain things, and like when he first sat me down and was like, "Hey, like let's go into this like segment work," and I was like this is so stupid. Like what like how are none of my goals gonna be to get a goal? Like, so then I'm just not thinking about goals. So it was one of those things. Like, it was kind of the first. It was kind of the first um, moment where I was kind of like just buying into like the process, like just like
Mhm.
have faith that just like every day, like just like brick by brick, start like laying a foundation, start just getting in a repeatable process where you can just like every day, you're gonna hit certain goals. And that was the first time like doing those segments where I was like, oh shit, like it's just so much more manageable. And that's where like I tell kids now, where I'm like, if I had that, and like anybody, like if you start that at a younger age, like it's such a cheat sheet that is so simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like you say, Joe, like it's the same thing in business. If you look 5 years, okay, we want to be a $5 million business. That's a scary fucking goal. But if we look at it, okay, next month we want to bring in 10K. Month after that, 12K. And it's like slowly build. It's like you look back in a year, it's like, holy shit, okay, we just made $170,000 or whatever it may be. Like it makes a difference. And it takes that load off your shoulders that ultimately, that pressure is what gets to people over time.
Yeah.
Um, but to jump in, so back to that first round, so you're leading the dub in goals. Go on. You finished the year out with Vic, and you guys did well that year too, didn't you? Was that the year you went? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
we did, pretty good. Like we were, that second year, right? So the first year we loaded up. So always once you load up, you're gonna have some sort of repercussion. So the next year, like we weren't supposed to be good. Like we like barely made playoffs. Played Kamloops, beat Kamloops, which was like we're playing with house money.
Yeah,
Then we ran into Vancouver, who ended up going to the finals that year. So we lost to Vancouver, but
yeah,
it was, even in that series, like a lot of, you talk about like watching certain guys, and Bowen Byram was a big piece of that Vancouver team, and just seeing like how committed those guys were, and like I talk about it now a ton, like just being like just addicted to it, like you could see it on him, like every game, and like we were getting to the point where like after we won that first series, it was like, oh my God, like this is like we're the best team ever. Like we shouldn't have even been in playoffs. So we lost to Vancouver that round, but it was again like it was cool to like start to see those like professional habits like more
mm,
up close, which was really cool to see. And then after that season, that's when I requested a trade out of Victoria for like multiple reasons, and it was nothing. Like it was nothing bad, but it was again like a ton of stuff that me and Bob were working on, in just the sense that I was ready for change, and I was ready to um, you know change my game and try to go somewhere where I felt that they would kind of understand me more as a player. So that was when I ended up getting traded to Lethbridge, which
mm,
was, you know, like my favorite 2 years in the dub for sure. Like I wish I, started there, just with the management group there with Anholt, and, our head coach with Kissio, and just the way they did everything there. And, I have all my family lives in Lethbridge. So it was just like the best. Like it
yeah,
couldn't have been a better spot.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and you were the captain the last year too, so that's always nice to see that. And that was your 20-year-old year, wasn't it?
So yeah, well, I played my 19-year-old year. The year I got traded, I was 19. Played that year. Had a good season there. Like I said, like Kiss and Kiss and Anholt like just really understood me as a player, and personally, like I mean, way more mature. Like because that summer is when I really dove into the mental side. Like really became addicted with like how mentally like tough can I get? Like I just really
Hmm.
nerded out with like all the mental aspect of the game and like in life, and just really tried to like fortify that piece. And then went to the Lethbridge season. They, put me in great spots, really understood me as a player. So I flourished there, like hit career highs in all categories, like really just had a good time playing there. And then COVID hit,
Yeah,
and like you want to talk about freaking crushing somebody's dreams with the NHL stuff. Like I was
yeah,
like, are you freaking like being undrafted my 18-year-old year, not getting invited to a camp. So already I'm like, what the hell? Like this is like that's also why I was kind of like, oh my God, like I didn't get drafted. Like I'm not gonna play pro. Like this is like let's close the door on this. And then going to Lethbridge, having a great season, being like, okay, like starting to talk to teams, starting to get like interest in that, and kind of being like, if you don't get drafted at the very least, like you'll go to a camp.
Yeah.
And then COVID hits, and you're just like holy shit, what is going on with this? Like just like
Mhm.
totally deflated, yeah. So that was like, I mean, another massive, massive curveball. And I mean, like you guys went through it too. Like nobody really knew hockey wise, like what we were gonna do. Like a
Wow.
ton of guys were like, this might be it. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and we saw it in the junior A side of things with our commits. So Joe and I, Dino, we met playing gens together for the Northeast Generals in Attleboro. There, my or I guess our 19-year-old years when we met. So I played there 18, 19, 20. And yeah, our 19-year-old year, the COVID year, was our first year together, and we were rolling. And then COVID hit, and went into our 20-year-old year. We started late, but yeah, like you say, like we had six guys get decoded D1,
yeah,
and because that was when they announced that the grad transfers could come back, like they could do a fifth year. So recruiting halted. All these guys that thought they were going to go in as freshmen didn't. I mean, hell, Joe, off our team, I was the only kid that went
Yeah.
Division 1. We had
Yep.
no one else commit. On average, Jens had like 5 to 6 Division 1 guys a year that would commit.
And they were
That
skilled
year, we
guys
had
too,
no one.
like
Yeah,
good
and we had
players.
like Jonathan Young, like going to Detroit Red Wings dev camp, and all of a sudden
yeah.
gets decoded from Merrimack because they have six guys coming back and they don't need a freshman anymore. Like it was crazy. It ruined everything. And like when COVID hit, that was when I was going to commit to Brown, Joe,
Yep.
and then it just totally halted because they had guys coming back and ended up like parlaying it into a commitment with LIU. But that was it. Like no one else committed, and we had so many guys lose commitments simply because of COVID and the way NCAA handled it. And I mean, it's the same for you too, Dino. Like it halted. There was no camps that year, right?
No, there's no nothing. Like
Yeah,
it was, yeah, like all the development camps were over Zoom that summer, and like there was nothing in person. Like, I mean, and then like you just like from the junior side, like so we're all 19. We're like waiting to play our 20-year-old season. Like,
Yep.
what that like are we even gonna have a season? And like, I mean, like for my side, like for me, I'm thinking, I need a 20-year-old season to get some sort of pro look. And like
yep,
for you guys, like on the junior A side, like I know like a lot of you guys were, I need a 20-year-old season to get colleges to look at me. So it
yeah,
was just like, but again, like it was like, I mean, depending how you look at it, like I think about all the guys that like didn't like maybe they weren't doing the right things like during all that stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like guys that like were kind of drifting away from like training hard and doing all those things to be ready for the season. Like just in case the season happened, like I
yeah.
gotta be like ready. So I think
Go.
like in a way, there was like in a way it was kind of like a blessing to guys that are like us, like guys that are like I'm sticking to
Advantage of
this. Like
Yeah.
yeah, like I'm just gonna keep grinding. Just on the off chance that there is a season. Like so
Yeah.
in a way, like I
Mhm.
think in a way it was almost nice for like guys that are kind of like in our area, like mentally.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, kind of weeded guys out in a sense too. Like the guys that aren't really
Yep.
bought in, that was it.
Yeah.
Like it ended them. And yeah, kind of thinned the herd out. That's for sure. And then, so when did you guys end up starting the season then?
So we ended up starting, that would have been God, we started like end of January, I want to say, and we went January, February, March. I think we ended in March. Like I think it was only like we played for like what, like 3 months because we only
Yeah,
played like 20 some games,
that was a wicked
and it
short.
was super short. And I like, oh man, it was so funny. Like you want to talk about like underdogs and like really trying to be like, no, like I'm freaking playing pro hockey. I remember when they announced that we're gonna have a season, and I remember I was at this dinner, and this one guy, I was like, I was like freaking jacked up. I was like, oh yeah, like there's a season, like I'm gonna freaking crush this season. Like I'm getting my contract. Like I'm gonna freaking play pro hockey. Like all I needed was like 5 games. Like just needed something. Like
Yeah.
just some sort of organized hockey where they could scout. And I'll never forget it because it stuck with me the whole season, especially how brutal that season was. Just like in a hole. But I remember this guy was like, "Oh yeah, but like it's just a formality. Like it's just something the league's doing that's nice for the 20-year-olds. Like they're gonna let you guys play, and it's not really gonna be scouted that much, and like." I don't really think they're going to be giving out contracts, and so it's more just like a formality for like you guys to go like put a period on your career.
Yeah.
And I just like I remember hearing that, and I was like, no, like I was like, there's no chance that I'm not going to get a contract out of this year. Like there's just no chance. And so it was like that was the first time where I was kind of like just like fueled it, like just like totally took in what he was saying and just like I'm just gonna use that the rest of the season to just like grind and like
Mhm.
push through because that season was brutal,
Oh
like
God, all the
so
restrictions.
brutal. Oh my God. All like playing with no fans and like for us, like we're playing like it was like a 3-and-3 every weekend, and we'd be like playing in Lethbridge, then busing to Edmonton 6 hours, playing that night, then busing back and playing the next day. Like it was just like I mean, like you couldn't have written like a worse way to get a contract. Like it was just so brutal to try to mentally like get your like walking into some of those buildings, like playing in Red Deer, Alberta, on like a Wednesday in an empty building on the back half of a 3-and-3. Like you're like, holy shit, like this is like so pointless. But it it was also like it was also one of those things where like for me I was like, man, I can like really get an edge on guys
Mhm.
because
Yep.
guys are just going to be so lazy. Like guys are just gonna like totally use this as an excuse. Where like for me, I was like, this is like there's a window here because all these kids that you know, even like some of the 20-year-olds, like they're like, oh, like screw this, like this is stupid, like this isn't real hockey. Like I'm just gonna go to school. And like some of the younger kids, like some of the drafted guys, like just being like, this is like no one's gonna look at this, like this is stupid. And they're like, I'm on the other side, like I'm like I will freaking fight like 3 times a night, like just for
Because
someone to see something.
that's your last year, you know. So
Totally. I
Mhm.
yeah,
was like, yeah, like it was like, and that's where like it goes back to like just like kind of who you are as a person. Like if you're committed to like for you guys, like if you're committed to grow this business, like you guys are gonna grind like countless hours. And like I'm sure when you guys started this thing, like there's people that are like, that's not gonna work. Like especially like with the drink, like there's a ton of energy drinks out there, but it's
Oh
like
yeah.
staying committed to being like, no, like we're gonna build this freaking brand. And like for me, that was like my whole thing. My 20-year-old season was I was like, I don't care how many games we have. Like I'm like, and for me, like it went back to like a lot of the like mental work I did, where it was like, who are you as a person? And for me, like I've always been a hockey player, definitely not a scholar. That shit, that that I knew that. I knew for sure I wasn't. I knew for sure I wasn't going to go to school and like freaking invent the light bulb. So I was like, man, like I know I'm a hockey player. Like I gotta die on this
you
sword.
gotta make it work,
But
right?
yeah, it was like, but it was one of those things where like I know who I am. Like I know I'm a hockey player. So like I just was like addicted with it. I was like, I'm just gonna freaking like die this year just to get that contract.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. So what was
So
your
what?
like? Sorry, Dylan. I just wanted to touch on like the mental side of it because I know earlier, like when you were your first couple of years playing in the dub and all that kind of stuff, you're struggling kind of with the mental side. So now that you have that shortened season, was there a huge expectation that you placed on yourself, or was it more of like just kind of grunt work of, hey, I got to find a way to make this work. I have X amount of time, and that's it.
Yeah, so um it's actually funny. So once we kind of started to hear that there was a season, um, our head coach called me and he was like, "Hey, like we want to name you captain for the year, you know, regardless of the season, like you would have been our captain." So right away, like right as that hits me,
Yep.
I'm like, "Oh shit." Like I'm like, "Okay." It's like it's one of those things where, now being older, I understand myself a lot more, but again, one of those things where I'm like, holy shit, like I'm the captain. Like I gotta freaking like do everything. You know what I mean? Like just like again, like expectation. And I was like I said, like I was way better back then with like the expectations part. But again, it's something where like you can only control it so much. So boom, get named captain. And then it's like, okay, I gotta like freaking, be the guy. And so it was kind of like more of that turnover of like, okay, gotta produce, gotta, and there was the whole like off ice thing with that, with like COVID and like me having to like be the guy to like police that whole thing. And so I like completely botched like the first 2 games of the season. So we go to training camp. It was so bad. We go to training camp and I'm like flying around training camp, like, like I'm the captain, this is how it's gonna be, and like this and that, and just like freaking laying down the law, which was like good and but um we go and we play the first game in Edmonton, and I'm like, you know, empty building, so you can like see all the scouts there. Like you're like, holy shit, there's actually like, a ton of scouts here. And so I'm like, bullshit. Like, I gotta, like, this has to be a hat trick tonight. Like, I gotta get a hat trick and I gotta fight tonight. Like, I gotta do something just like over the top. Which, like, so totally threw my Bob Wilkie training out the window. Ended up, like, totally, like, over revving myself. Like, was like in fifth gear. Go out, like, first period, probably one of the worst periods of hockey I've ever played in my entire life. Like, you could have told me the puck was a brick of C4, like just really bad, like really bad hockey. And then second period, I go to like kill this little kid because I'm like, I just gotta do something. So I'm just gonna go like put this guy in like the ninth row. I end up getting, I end up going to hit this kid, and I had this stupid freaking like half bubble on because I took a slap shot to the jaw in training camp. So I had this stupid bubble thing on,
Yeah,
and I go to hit this kid, and he reverse hits me, and just like boom, like rings my bell, conk, like straight freaking yeah, like I was like just in la la land. So right then, like I'm like, oh my god, like this is like if I have a concussion, like I'm
that's
X
it.
amount of weeks, yeah, like I'm like I maybe have like 8 games left now. Like this could like really drag out. So it was like the start of that season was just so bad, like so like over amplified in my head, which is again like I mean like you look back at these things and it's like okay that was like a massive like learning curve, like just to like learn
Mhm.
how to manage these like bigger expectations and not have it just like completely run your life, because I was like just no good. Just so freaking bottled up that it was like just completely took me over, which was yeah, again, like just looking back, I'm thankful it happened because it was like learned a ton from it, but one of those things where you're like that could have maybe we could have avoided that hurdle.
No kidding. But like you say, that's part of it. It's all part of the game, part of the grind, and like you said, you learn from it. And so, what ended up happening? Were you conked after that?
Oh yeah, yeah, big time. Got conked, so I missed. Yeah, dude, like my 20-year-old year was like such a wreck. It was like a good and bad wreck. So I get conked, really start leaning into Bob again. I'm like, Bob, I'm like relapsing, like I'm like a freaking heroin addict. So I'm like, dude, we gotta like let's like start cracking these books open again. Like let's get these pages start flipping again. So I get everything dialed back in, and I like then I really start like going back to my basics of like, okay, what am I trying to get out of this year? What am I trying to like end my career on? Like, how do I
Mhm.
want to like finish this thing off? So really start like tightening the screws on that stuff, and then things like started to fall into place. Like started getting like a ton of points, like had interest, like getting interviewed by these teams, and then hiccup number two, I I'm there, we're in the tunnel about to go out, and our head coach comes up to me while I'm in the tunnel, and he shows me this text, and it's from the like scout from the Oilers, and he's like, "Hey, so and so is gonna be there tonight, like watching Dino." And he shows me this text, and so I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna like bite somebody on the jaw. Like I'm gonna like just go kill someone, like just like totally try to make a statement." End up going out there, like totally botched it, and I like crushed this kid. Ended up getting I think I got a 3 game suspension from it. So I ended up, yeah, first shift, first shift.
Oh, lovely.
I get this text. I get shown this text. Go out, start the period. Puck gets dumped in the corner. Boom, 3 game suspension, like right away. So I get
Yeah.
freaking suspended these 3 games. And I'm just like back to being a wreck. I'm like, oh my God, my career's over. Like, I got to start learning the Pythagorean theorem again. Like, I'm gonna have to go to freaking, I'm gonna have to go to the University of Calgary and like fail out of the University of Calgary and like become like a freaking janitor. Like, I was just like so down the drain on it. And so I served these 3 games, play out the rest of the season. And like I ended up having like a great season. Like I was like I mean not season really. Like we only played 20 some games, but I was like a point a game. Like
Hmm.
had like good production, like had a ton of good fights. So it was like I had like these like segments where it was like just like super dialed in. Like totally on my plan, like doing everything Bob taught me to a T, and then just like these little lapses where it's just like a
Yeah.
bulldozer where it was just like completely derailing myself, which like I mean like I say with like all this stuff, very good learning, but I mean would have liked to avoid that.
No kidding. So okay, so season wraps up, and now I was telling Joe too. Like we haven't chatted in since COVID, really, when we were skating in Calgary together when no one had ice going.
Yeah.
So that would have been right before your 20-year-old year. That was the last time we saw each other and really got to catch up. So this is new to me. So how did things come to be with Bakersfield? What did that look like after the season? Obviously, they were interested at this point, and kind of walk us through how that went down, how you were feeling about it, and
Yeah, it was a really hard, like crazy process. So that season ends, and then it was kind of, on the phone with my agent a ton, like just being like, hey, like what's out there? Like what's going on? And the recurring like feedback I was getting back was, yeah, like these teams like really like you, but COVID pushed a ton of guys to Europe. So now all these European guys are coming back over. So like, start getting back in the gym, I start training again, and like I'm just getting a ton where it's like probably not, man. Like, there's not a lot of contracts out there to begin with. You
mm,
had the short season, you're not a drafted guy, which like obviously hurts a ton. So I met with like the UFC coach, met with him. I enrolled in UFC, had to take like I was taking all these summer courses because like I said, like I wasn't Einstein. So I missed like a ton of credits, which is crazy that I even graduated. I don't know if I even have like a legit diploma. So I'm
What from
like,
Ed?
yeah, dude, like I was missing like a ton of stuff, which is like, so I don't even know if that's like a legit. I might have not graduated high school for all I know. There's like an
Oh, come on, I
asterisk.
wouldn't have let that happen.
Yeah, I know, seriously. Um, so yeah, so I'm like in the summer, like grinding these freaking classes. Like I'm taking these math classes, and I'm like, holy shit, like I don't know any of this stuff. So I'm just pissed. Like I'm like, this is not what I wanted to be doing. Like I wanted to have a contract by now and like just focus on training. And so I'm like finish these classes, end up like fully enrolling in UFC, like fully committed to the hockey team. Like at this point, like we're getting into like late July, early August, where I'm like, okay, like I gotta start looking. Like I was starting to look for housing in Calgary, like for like the team and everything. Like I was like well on that path, and
Yeah.
like super bummed. Like I was like, God, like I like really wanted to play pro. Like felt like I had a good game to play pro. Like I like felt like a lot of my traits would translate very good to pro. And that was kind of my whole thing. My 20-year-old year was like, I just need a shot. Like just need
Mhm.
someone to like take a flyer on me. And so it's like like middle of August. The UFC starts the the week after. I go out to Vernon with one of our buddies, pro.
Yeah.
Go out to Vernon. I'm like totally like over pro everything, and I'm like whatever. I'll just play UFC and like gas pro. And I end up getting a phone call from my agent. I'm like on the boat, like just chilling, and I get a phone call from my agent. He's like, "Hey, like I might have something here, like Edmonton, like really liked you, and we might be able to work something out with Baco." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, like right on, like just like kind of what I said, like I was like, just get me something, like
Mhm.
literally, like just get me anything," because at that point, like I had confidence in myself where it was like I knew I could play pro, I just had to get there.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
he was like, calls me back that night. He's like, all right. And he's like, I got something. Like they offered me something. And I'll never forget it. He's like, but I don't love it. He's like, I think you should go to school, do your schooling. You can never get too much schooling, play hockey, like do that. And so I was like, okay, what's the offer? Like, what's the deal? And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a 1 year, two-way AHL, ECHL contract. And, and he was like, it's for like 40 grand. And I was like, shit, yeah, I'm taking that. I was like, a freaking rich man. What are you talking about? I was like, 40 grand for a freaking to play pro hockey. I was like, shit, sign it now. I was like, I'm I'm down. Like, let's do it. And looking back, like now what I know about pro hockey, like that's like the worst freaking deal you can take. Like you're basically asking to take that deal and like ultimately they're probably just gonna cut you from the coast team. Or they'll keep you in the coast, but like they're like not really looking at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my agent's like really fighting me on it. Like I was like, dude, like let's take this deal. Like I'm like, and this is when I was like really starting to install like the work ethic side, which like I was always like, I mean, like me and Schwett used to train like really freaking hard in the gym,
He told me.
but
He
like,
told me.
yeah, oh yeah. But this is when I was kind of like really getting into like the fitness side and like there's like the work ethic side. So I was like, dude, like just sign it and just get me there. Like I'll make it. Like just get me there. And so we're
Yeah.
going back and forth on this for like a while, man. Like a long time. Like he was like because like I was gonna forfeit my package, like the schooling package,
Right.
which that's like a huge piece of like why you go to the dub. Like that's basically like why 90% of the kids go to the dub because you get free schooling, which is like a huge, huge perk. And so that's why he was like, dude, like I wouldn't take this deal. Like you're gonna play in the coast, and like you could go to school, do your schooling,
And
and
then
then
go
go
there.
play in the coast. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's like you're not like you're not missing out on like an entry level deal here. Like you're missing out to like be in like the freaking cheese grinder. Like you're not missing anything. But like mentally, I was like, no, man, like just like, and this is like more of like the like newer mentality that I've like started to like work on of just like, no, man, like just get me there. Like
Mhm.
if you get me there, like I will freaking perform.
Yeah.
So we end up signing the deal. Sign the deal. I'm like over the moon about it. And then, so like trained my ass off that summer. Like killed myself that summer. Like was doing like 3 workouts a day. Plus I was working this uh, this like ranch job. So I was just like basically just trying to do like anything physical that I could to just be like, because I knew like I mean, I know more about it now, but I knew like going in, like I'm gonna have to like steal someone's spot because I
Mhm.
don't have a spot. Like they basically just gave me like a freaking charity contract. So I was
Yeah.
like, I know I gotta go beat someone out. So then I go to Edmonton, which was crazy they even had me come to camp. Go to Edmonton's camp, show up there for rookie camp, and like couldn't have been lower on the totem pole. Like we like show up to camp. We show up to camp. I'm sharing a locker with this dude. So like already in my head, I'm like, okay, these guys aren't very high on me. So I'm
Right,
sharing a
right.
locker with this guy. And then I like walk into the dressing room and they have like the lineups listed. And I'm like, fifth line outside the box though. So I'm like the fifth line, but I'm not even like on the line really. I'm like the fourth dude, like on the fucking fifth line. So I'm like, holy shit. Maybe I should have went to UFC and like drank enough beer to like kill myself. So I'm like just but again, like I mean like behind all that, like obviously I recognized all that. Like I recognized all this was going on. But like in my head, I still had just like the concrete like backing of like I'm gonna make it.
Mhm.
Right.
Like I just had like so much confidence in the sense of like these guys are not gonna take my spot. Like I would like kill someone out here. Like I'm gonna get this spot. And so it was like that was the first time where I really saw like holy shit, like you can like hard work is like so undervalued in my opinion.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like even like it was crazy to see some of these guys come in like these high draft picks and they would come in and like they would see their name get bumped down to like the second line and it's just like you could see it in their eyes they were like done like completely checked out and that was like the
Huh.
first time where like I started seeing that and I was like oh like that guy just checked out I got him now like now I can catch that guy so we go through Edmonton. Then they started sending guys down to Baco for Bakersfield camp. And so like the Edmonton camp, I was really just like the whole time I was there, I was just like, this is freaking so cool. Like I was just
Yeah.
like fanboying basically. Like getting on the
This
ice
is
with like
awesome.
McDavid and Draisaitl. Like I was like, this is so freaking cool. Like I can't believe these guys are like passing me the puck. Like just like so like really taking that whole experience in. And then like I knew like getting down to Baco, like that's my camp. Like Edmonton
Mhm.
was just like a cool, like you get to say you went to an NHL camp, but I knew like Baco was like, all right, like this is like you got to start like
Sick.
taking heads off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get into Baco. I'm coming into Baco, and again, like I always fight my ego. Sweat knows this. I come into Baco, and I'm like, oh man, like just got out of NHL training camp, like freaking I'm the shit. Come into Baco, and again, lineup gets posted, boom, outside. Fifth line outside. So I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? But like, had to tap into that mindset again. And it was like, man, being able to like start, like, it was like we would do training camp. Then it was we had one freaking preseason game that year. One.
Wow.
So you, oh man, like usually they do like two or three to like
Yeah.
see these bubble guys. Because it's
Yeah.
like you can do, like you guys know, like you can do all the freaking skates and like practices and like, I mean, I've met practice players that like look like they could outscore McDavid in practice, and then they get in a game, and it's like this guy couldn't have less hockey sense. So we get this game, and we're playing Stockton, who's like they come to be like the best team in the division that year. And I'm like, first off, I'm like I have to get into this game, like because they were scratching guys. Like we had a
Mhm.
ton of guys in camp, so I'm like I just like I have to make this game. Like just get into the game, and then like you can start like really pushing. So I make the lineup. They put me in the lineup, fourth line, like just like I was playing my offside too. Like I'm right-handed. I was playing the left wing. So I'm like, this is a freaking disaster. But I remember walking into that game, and it was like a do or die. Like it was like that you need to like encapsulate this freaking game. Like you need to just like completely be on empty after this game. Go out, end up playing like a really good game. Like again, like didn't have any points. Like totally fell back on like Wilkie's thing. Didn't have any points, but like played like a hard, like solid game.
Yeah.
And so we come in the next morning, and in pro, like you made the team by you get like a housing letter, basically like just this letter that says like you can go out and start looking for a house in the area.
Yeah.
So that's like how you know you made the team. And so we come in the next day, and everybody's got housing. Oh, and just to recap, I'm not even in the main dressing room. I'm getting dressed in like a water closet, basically. Like, so I'm just like, oh my God. So I come in the next day, and I'm like for sure they made cuts last night. Like for sure they've got the team made. Like there's no way I'm not gonna have a housing letter. Come in, all these guys got housing letters. I don't have a housing letter. So I'm still in the hotel. Yeah, so I'm still in the hotel. So we're practicing, like we're building up for the home opener. Like I'm like, and the thing about like practicing in pro is like if you're one of those dudes that like, you know, you're like a fourth line guy, like in and out type of guy, like they watch your practices so freaking like if I missed a pass my rookie year, scratch. Like 100% scratch. So like we're leading up to the home opener, and I'm practicing like a madman. Like just like I was. It's so funny that the Underdog brand, the drink has beta alanine in it because I was eating beta alanine tablets like Tic Tacs before practice. Like I was getting so freaking juiced up before practice because I was like, but it all like goes back to like I was just like I'm just gonna be that guy. Like I'm gonna be that guy in practice, like hitting people because I just like I wanted,
You
like I
want it.
wanted to play pro, like I wanted so bad. So we're practicing leading up to the home opener. Still in the hotel, I end up making the opening night roster. Like they put me, they. I remember coming in that morning, and in my head, I'm like, "There's no way I'm making this roster." Like there's all these like that's the thing, like getting to pro, like in junior, you like see some of these guys and you're like, oh my God, like this guy's brutal. Like I'll be able to like beat this guy no problem. And then like getting to pro, I'm like looking up and down our roster and I'm like, holy shit, like I'm like the only guy here that's not drafted. So I end up making the roster, the opening night roster, and we had a Friday Saturday games against San Jose. So I played Friday night, played pretty good. Like had another like just like grinded my ass off. Like just so grindy. And then I'm like, okay, hopefully I play the next night. Come in the next morning, saw that they let a few guys go, like a few forwards. So I was like, oh
Mhm.
shit, okay. There's a little confidence. So I was like, okay, I'm doing something right. like again, like the process, like stick to this process. Come in the next day, I'm playing again Saturday. So we go getting ready, game starts. One of our guys gets like killed. Like he was on my line, like gets murdered by this guy. And so I'm like, oh, fucking rights. Like, this is like, I'm gonna
This
kill
it's
this
go
kid.
time now.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And he was like relatively my size. Like, I was like, I'm gonna pump this dude. Like, this guy's like, I'm gonna unleash on this guy. So we get back and like, I'm trying to take on this role, right? Like, I'm trying to like carve out a role in pro hockey of being like, like you need to have a brand. Like, that's one
Mhm.
thing that I've learned is you gotta have a brand like that you can count on. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna be like an enforcer. Like I'm just gonna like fight every night. Like who cares? I was like, it's better than going to school. So we get back to the bench and I'm on the bench and I'm like screaming at this guy. Like I'm like next shift, like we're going. And this guy's like kind of like looking at me like whatever. Like he could probably tell I was a rookie. Get out there. He doesn't have the puck. I like crush him, kill him at center ice. We drop, and he's like squaring up weird. I like square up with him, grab him. He's a lefty, switches, my shoulder rolls out of socket.
Oh no.
Like, yeah, so I'm tied on with this guy. My shoulder's like this, and he's a lefty, and just like fed me dinner. Like just started the lawnmower on me. Gave me about like gave me about 50 uppercuts. It's on YouTube. You can look it up. Like
I thought
like
you were gonna
just
say you absolutely destroyed him, but I guess not.
no. I got freaking murdered by this dude. Shoulders out of socket. I fall back at the end of the fight and it pops back in. So I'm like, I'm sitting in the box. I'm like, oh my God. Like I just freaking totally tore my labrum like clean out of my socket. This is gonna be bad. Go back to the room and like the boys are loving it. Coach loves it. End up finishing the game and we finish the game and then our captain comes in and he's like yeah like everybody's going out like let's like go get changed so go back to the dry stall area like our lounge and all these forwards are gone like all the guys I was competing against gone like they all got cut that night yeah so I'm like sitting in the room I'm like fucking rights like just like so fulfilled like I was like that was like the first time where it was like that's how the process pays out. Like right
Yeah.
there. Like that is like had so many opportunities to just like pack it in, but just like
Yep.
kept grinding.
No.
And then like the second I saw those guys leave the room, I was like, fuck, that feels good. Like
No
that was
kidding.
like the first time where I was like,
You can take a
the
breath.
oh my God, you take a and it was the first time where I was like, holy shit, like this hard work thing like really works. Like,
It's
because
real,
they just
yeah.
like it's crazy how like some guys just like they just can't keep doing it. Like it was,
Mhm.
and that was the first time where I was like, holy shit, like this is like it was just so cool to see like firsthand where you're like, especially when you had like so many chances to just like completely pack it in.
Mhm. Yeah. No kidding. That's awesome. I hadn't heard that story, so that's phenomenal. Now I know Dino, you said you got family stuff going on at 5. I mean, we'd love to keep chatting, but if you got to go, we understand too.
Yeah,
It's,
I mean, we
but
can
I'll
always
just
have
enjoy
you on
myself.
too again to talk more about what's going on now as well.
Oh,
No,
we'll
I
have
got
time.
time. I don't even think these guys have showed up yet. But it's totally
Beautiful.
up to you guys. Like
No,
I got time.
absolutely. I mean, this is awesome. And like I said, I haven't heard any of these stories, so we haven't caught up. I'd love to keep going. So you end up, I assume you get your letter that night, then, yeah, or that week.
No,
Really?
no. So this is a crazy part. So this is at the start of the season. So I'm like, okay, where the fuck's this letter? Like, what's going on with this? Like, I like went to the team guy. I was like, hey, like, did I get a housing letter? Like, I checked my stall, but like, I didn't have anything in there. And he's like, uh, yeah, no, not yet. So I'm like, fuck, okay, like, don't know
Back
what
to the
this is about.
grindstone. Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, let's just keep going.
yeah.
So man, I was living in the Bakersfield downtown Marriott for the first. like month and a half of the season.
Oh my God.
Yeah, man. Like it was crazy. Like I was living down there for like we were like 10 to 15 games into the season
And were
and
you
I
the only
was
guy that was in that situation?
yeah, I was the only guy in the hotel. It was brutal, man. So brutal. Because like all these guys were like getting houses, like moving in, like totally like yeah, like I was just by myself at the hotel. Like it was like we had guys like coming up and down from like the NHL team. So like I was
Yeah.
like trying to be like what's up to these guys, and they're like, dude, you're still in the hotel. Like, what are you talking about? So yeah, I was like, man, I was in the hotel for a long freaking time, man. Like it was brutal. It was like it was brutal. I thought I was gonna live in the hotel the whole season. Because the thing about
Holy
the housing
shit.
letter is once they give you once they give you a housing letter, it's all to do with like your rent. So if they give you a housing letter and then they send you down to the coast, the team has to pay your rent. So that's why like bubble
Right.
guys, they're like super hesitant to give them housing letters because they're like, we don't want to just have to like pay this kid rent for like
Yeah.
could be the whole season. Like if you get sent down and whatever, you don't get called up. So they were like super, super hesitant to give me my housing letter, which was again just like such a freaking headache. Like I was like, oh man, like downtown Bakersfield dodging crackheads. It was a disaster.
Well, that was probably the second breath you got to take when you finally got it, right? You said what, 15 games in? You said when you finally got it.
Oh yeah, yeah, like we probably yeah, like right around that 10-15 game mark, finally got the housing letter, and that was like again, like throughout my career, there's always been those like little moments where you're like just on the cusp of being like, okay, like fuck this, like what is going on? And then got the housing letter, and I was like, okay, like reset again, like just like here we go, continue the process, and like within that whole stretch was like getting back to like getting scratched. Like in the dub, I never got scratched. Like my
Mm.
whole dub career, I got scratched one time, and it was because like it basically looked like I was playing left-handed this one game, and so I got scratched the next game.
Wow.
And so like within the whole like housing letter thing, like personally, I'm having to deal with like being scratched again, which was like super super hard for me to like because I just never really had to deal with it. And like I said, like I played the first like 5 games of the season every night, like played them in a row, and then I got scratched. I think I got scratched like 7 straight games, and I was like, holy
Wow.
shit, like yeah. So I was like, oh my god, like I'm for sure going down, and like this is like just having to deal with that whole aspect of being like a rookie on the team, you're getting scratched, so you're not like fully part of like what's going on. Like so you feel like super alienated from the team, like,
Yeah.
didn't know many guys on the team, like so just like super,
Yeah.
super secluded and having to live at the hotel. Like it was just like
That's
it was a
tough, man.
hard yeah, like mentally it was
That's a test
super,
of will
super
right there.
tough. Yeah, like it was but again, like it goes back to like mentally, like I put a ton of work in mentally because I knew like some of that would come, but like not to that extent. But I'm happy that I like put so much stock into like my mental game to freaking hang on to that because that was like brutal to go through that.
Yeah. No kidding. So that was okay. So that was rookie year, and now you've just finished your third full season with Baco, right?
Yeah, yeah.
No shit.
Just finished my third year. Yeah, and I'm on contract. I just finished my last contract this year.
Okay, so sign again come July 1, or how does that work for the A?
Yeah, so our contracts end on June 30th.
Okay.
So, um, yeah, I mean, it's just funny like how these processes just like start repeating. Like like right now. Like I'm like I have no idea what's going on. Like
Really?
yeah, like it's just like it's tough. It's tough going into pro hockey not being drafted. Like
Mm,
Yeah.
you really understand how much harder it is to like carve out a path being undrafted because you start to see the one thing that's like been super interesting to me is like you really start to see the business side to how these teams operate. Like
it
you
is. It's
start to see, oh man, like you start to see how like this is just like we're just investments. Like these draft picks, like they're like, man, we really need these investments to pay
Yeah.
out for us.
More invested. They got more invested in the draft picks, you know?
100%. Like so that's where
and even the dub
like
is like that too. Like, and it starts at a young age. It's a business that they're trying to make money. They have a goal, and yeah, it's ruthless compared to. I mean, college is somewhat turned into that with the transfer portal now, but I mean, the even the dub, it's ruthless, and pro is just another step up the ladder where, yeah, it's totally cutthroat.
yeah, it is like it is insane. But like it's like it's very two-sided too because like you get these drafted guys that like I said, like they're so mentally weak and they're just like they've had, you know, so much of their career just like handed to them
Just
Yeah,
where
smooth
they've just
sailing.
like yeah, where they've just always kind of like got pushed along. And so like for me, in some cases, it's nice having to go up against these drafted guys because, like, basically all you gotta do is outwork them, which
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
can be hard if you haven't like put the work in.
Right.
But like if you've like put the work in, like I mean, it's still hard, but like it's very doable. And like even for me, like I'm still very like young in that process. Like I just finished my third year pro, so like I almost have like 200 games professionally, but I'm still like I'm still pushing to like get my NHL deal. Like
Yeah,
that's
Yeah.
like I've still never signed an NHL deal, which like
Hmm.
I mean even like little stuff. Like I get like all these like European texts where
Mhm.
like so like from me seeing that they think like oh his career is like he's like not gonna go to the NHL because like he's like been an AHL guy, like only been on AHL deals, like you
Hmm.
know maybe he'll want to come to Europe. So
Yeah,
it's funny,
Yeah.
like every time I get like these like European texts, like now I've started to save them and I put them in these voice recordings, and like I think it's Goggins who first did this, and then I just like listen to them, where it's just like so much fuel, which like now it's like I love getting the text because I'm just like, man, I can't wait to sign this NHL deal. But it's
Yeah.
just like it's like like it's little things like that that like I've started to learn of just like really like I mean like the military guys talk about it a ton. Like what's your why? Like your
Mhm.
why has to be like so unbreakable. And
Yeah,
like that for me, like my why is like I've dreamt about playing in NHL my entire life and like I'm this close. So
yeah.
like there's no reason to stop now. Like you're so freaking close.
No
So
kidding.
like for me, like that's like a big like, you know, motivator of just like kind of not having the easy road at all and just
Right.
like trying to like finally push in is like the, you know, that would kind of be like the icing on the cake. But it's freaking such a process.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I mean, that's basically the epitome for the last, what, probably since your 16-year-old year, essentially.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like the first time the draft went, when I didn't get drafted, that was the first point where I was kind of like really started like buying into like the work ethic side. And it's funny, like when you guys started doing your whole thing, like because like I've followed you guys like since you started Underdog, like since like you started posting about it. And so it was funny how we were kind of like doing the same thing, like going up the ranks, where it was like I would see you guys like post all these like quotes and like all the like the stuff that you guys used to post, and I was like, fucking right, like this is like sick. Like I was like tapping into all this stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, like it was just like good stuff to like be like I mean, one, it's like good that you guys put that stuff out there. but it was funny, like wait, like seeing some of your guys' stuff, and I was like, I'm just gonna go murder training today. Like it was just so funny how it was like lining up.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome. I mean, that's what it's all about. And I mean, I was telling Joey too, Dino, like you, me, and Doc used to get after it in the ducket together, and like we had our own rack, you and me in 15s and prep. Obviously, Doc
Yeah,
was in Okotoks already, and it was just you, me, that prep year. But we had that rack on the end to ourselves, and like we got after it. Like we made strides those 2 years together. And when you have someone that can push you and has similar goals and the same drive, um, it's deadly and it's a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah. That's like that's a big thing that I'm kind of like tapping into right now is like like the military guys talk about it a ton, especially like the special forces guys. Like they talk about like your tribe and like
Mhm.
who's your tribe? Like what is your tribe? Like what's like your goal as a tribe and like what are kind of like your values and like I mean for me like it started like when we were doing that stuff. Like that was like the first time that like I really like trained that hard. And now it's like those are kind of like the people you look to. I mean, like Joe, I don't know you, but like it seems like you're like part of like that tribe, which is
Yeah,
like it's funny how you kind of like you just kind of like start finding those people. Like
Yeah.
you get put in all these different and now like in Baco, like I've got like a ton of guys that are kind of like on that path. I mean, Holloway is like a great example.
yeah,
Like he's like Dill for me, like for my career, like he's been like a game changer for me because like towards the end of my rookie season, we had a coaching change, and the coach that came in like
mhm,
loved me, and I started playing with Dill. Like my like the last 15 games of the season, I had 13 points in 15 games, so
yeah,
I was like, freaking, this is sick. I was like. I basically just got my housing letter, and now I'm playing with like our first round draft pick.
yeah.
So I was this is like, this is unreal. But it was just funny how you find those guys like throughout whatever you're doing who just like once you connect on like one little like key value, it's like, frick,
Yeah.
let's explode this
It's a
thing.
work makes a world of difference too, and especially in sports. Like if you're surrounded, I've been a part of teams before where it's just a negative culture or like a poor work ethic within that culture, and it's hard. It makes it that much harder to get done what you want to achieve. You know what I mean? While
Yeah.
you're there on the team or within that environment, so it does. It absolutely makes a world of difference when you have guys around you that are looking for the same thing, they have the same mindset, and they just want to
Yeah.
grind. Especially if that's what you do. Like that's your value, that's your brand. You know what I mean? Like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. That's yeah, your brand. That's well said. That's like totally finding people that like live under that brand. I love that.
And that's us, like the underdog brand. That's the meaning behind it.
Yeah,
Like that's us. Um,
yeah.
Yeah.
and you can embody that, and you can take that so far, not just in sports, but in life, business, whatever it may be, relationships. Like it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's unreal. That's why like even at the gym when I bring like the drink in, everybody's like underdog, like, what is that? Like and like it's just funny like showing them your page and everything. It's yeah, I love that brand, man. That's like yeah, I love that. That's unreal.
Well, that's
I
good. I
mean,
mean, that makes our day. That's why we do it. Why we have so much fun with it. I was pumped when I forget when you swiped up on it was a story I think, and then we ended up catching up the one night
Yeah.
there, sending you a case. Like I couldn't wait for you to try it and get it into the ducket and just
Oh
hear you had
yeah.
to.
Yeah. Yeah, that first oh my God, the first time I like drank it, I was like, holy shit. I was like, let's freaking go work out. I was like, where's the heaviest barbell we have? Like, let's go crush something. Yeah, no, that was I mean, now I'm like, man, I'm gonna need like a ton of that. Like,
Well, good. We'll get you guys set up in Bakersfield. Well, I mean, once you're back in the
100%.
shipping gets way easier.
Yeah.
So we'll have you going. Not to worry.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's unreal.
Dude, and what did you ever get a chance to give one to Ross? What did he think of the label?
He just got back. I gave him some. He was like, I mean, Ross, like he already runs like at such a high meter.
Oh,
I gave him the strawberry one. He really liked that one. And yeah, he's like, I mean, you know, Ross, he's like into like the science of it and like
Yep,
how clean is it and like this and that. So I was telling him like, oh yeah, like they just got like all their certifications and like tested it and like everything like that. So yeah, he loved it.
that's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to reach out to Ross soon and chat with him about it because like he's the perfect advocate to have for the brand and for the drink. Like if
Totally.
Ross McCain approves it, then like we're set. you know,
Yeah, you have, I mean, you have all of Edge on it. Like,
that's
because he's the
awesome.
director now. Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Yeah, no,
that's
he only had like he like saw the can and like all that, but he didn't like really like hack it. So I got to bring it to him like early in the morning before he's 15 cups of coffee. But
that's
I
funny.
mean,
Yeah, you gotta.
he'd be a great guy to like get onto that.
Oh yeah, and to have like Ross on for the podcast and like talk to
Yeah,
Ross. Joe, you would love him. He's probably one of the most educated people I've ever met in like sports, nutrition, and training.
yeah,
He's the man. He's awesome. And yeah, I'll have to reach out to him soon,
yeah,
Dino. I
yeah.
miss
You
it. I
should.
miss going at Edge. That place was awesome. I wish, it was easier for me to train there because I would love to be back there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Who's all there training right now in the summer, Dino?
um like guys you would know is like Crow's there, Dill's there, Cash is there, Jake Bean, uh, Ty Ratty,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
then like Kale Clegg just came and joined the group. Tyson
Mhm.
Jost joined the group.
Wow.
Um, Morgan Geeky plays out in Boston. His little brother
Holy
is
shit.
like a top five draft pick.
Yeah,
Yeah, like they've like really got it going now. Like Flurry's out there now. Like they've really started to build out that pro group.
yeah. That's awesome. That's so good to see. I mean, that place has done so much for so many different athletes. Like, it's cool to
Oh
see that
yeah,
they still come back and give back
yeah,
to it.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's so good.
No, yeah. It's been unreal. It'd be so cool to get you guys out there and like do like a day where like every all the athletes can come in and like try the product and like listen to you guys. Because like I mean you guys know like probably 80% of the people that you talk to think that you're like a hardo freaking juiced up idiot. And then you get to like the people that actually understand like what's really going on and it like completely hits home. And
Yeah.
like I think especially a lot of the newer guys that are starting to train there, it would really hit home with them. Because like you still have like the guys that are just like in there like 2 times a week and like not really getting after it. But then there's like that like core group where it's like, you know, like they're really grinding. And like that's like the guys that like would really tap into like what you guys do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's good to hear. And I mean, we love having your support too. Like when you threw the story up, thanks again. That was
Oh yeah, for
sweet.
sure.
I mean, the Ducket, tried to show Joey pictures too, like the banners in the background of all the show players that train there. Like it's so cool. Like that place is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
But anything like that means the world to us. And like, taking the time to come on, chat with us on the podcast, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
get the product in Edge, everything like that. And I mean, feel free to share those around. I'll send you more. Like you don't need to worry about buying a case. Like we'll send you more.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
if you're giving them out, like, and you got, whatever Holloway wants to try one, like absolutely, I'll send you a free case. Like
Oh
if
yeah.
you're shooting around, let me know. And we'll get you some. And obviously, when you're in Bakersfield too, we'll get you set up down there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I'm definitely going to be pushing that out there. I know like Anthony really wants some, Dimitri wants some. Like I got a couple guys up there that want some. So yeah, no, I'll definitely keep pushing that out there. But yeah, no, it's cool to do this stuff too. Like anytime you guys I can get on and chat, I would love to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, Joey and I took a lot away from this too, and it's always fun. Like when we dive into the mental side of things, like that's a topic that we've talked about in the past with previous guests, and it's always kind of a reminder of how important it is and like how overlooked it is too.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
It's awesome. So like, thanks again, Dino. It was awesome to hear your story, what you went through, relive some of the stories and the glory days, and listen to what you're up
Yeah.
to today and all the success you're having. And I mean, we wish you nothing but the best, and keep us posted. Like, obviously, we got to stay in touch too. I know we've been texting back and forth over the years, but yeah, we gotta call every once in a while and stay up to date. So you'll have to keep me posted on what happens. I assume you'll go to Oilers camp, this fall.
Yeah, I mean, I should be hearing back about a contract like in the next week or two. So yeah, I'll let you know and yeah, I'll definitely stay more in touch with everything that's going on. Hopefully get you guys a few clients up here.
Dude, absolutely. That'd be awesome. Well, nothing but the best, and we'll stay in touch. I talk with Doc all the time. I don't even know if I told you. So Doc invested in UD. Was that last summer, Joe, or 2 summers ago now? Last summer?
I think that was last summer. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I
No
talk with
way.
Doc every other day. Yeah. So he invested, yeah, last summer. And I mean, Doc and I stayed in touch over the years. But now, especially like with the tie with Underdog, I mean, I talk to him every other day. So it's awesome. He's down in Minnesota now. He's another guy that would normally be training at Edge, but yeah, we gotta stay in touch like that and follow along. I mean, I've always been following along, but yeah, we'll stay in touch and keep me up to date. And nothing but the best.
Yeah, yeah, well for sure. Thanks again, boys. This was cool. Let me know what else I can do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Say hi to the
Thanks.
fam, Dino. Hope everyone's doing well.
Yeah. Yeah, well for sure. All right. Thanks, boys. See ya.
Yep.
Have a
See
good
you,
one.
man.